Yo guys, Talzion here. RimWorld is a game. RimWorld is a story generator made by Tynan by my book Sylvester, with essentially the intent to be a cool tragedy generator you can use to bitch about the shit that Randy throws your way to your friends on the internet, but then be amazed as your colony gets pulled back from the brink by divine intervention. Recently, a new DLC was launched, Ideology, following Royalty as the second DLC add-on for the game, adding a whole slew of new things which we'll be focusing on today. But firstly, I'll give a quick overview of the game in its vanilla state. RimWorld is a highly customizable colony simulator game / storytelling device. Put simply, you take control of a small group of humans, or pawns as they're referred to in-game, who found themselves on this planet somehow or other. This planet is a RimWorld, a semi-developed Terran world in the setting of the game, about 3000 years in the future, which you generate before starting and can pick what spot to start on, with already established settlements scattered across the face of the planet, whose locations relative to your settlement actually matter, since travel is in real time on the map itself. Starting with the standard crash-landed scenario, you have a good base of items, 3 pawns to start with, and some technologies researched already as well. Your end goal is trying to get off this planet, but to achieve that you need some goals along the way. Stuff like setting up a base, so your pawns don't freeze or fry to death outside, that they have a bed to sleep in, that they have a farm where they can grow some food, that they have tables to actually eat the food at because otherwise they go insane, that they have recreation to distract themselves from the harsh reality that nothing is sacred and every hour a raid could happen who have come to take your pawns back to the settlement and sell them into slavery or do unspeakable things with them. Then set up a research bench to research television to distract them even more. RimWorld is a lot like managing a small city-state in a way. A wise ruler prepares for war in times of peace. 90% of your decisions revolve around being at war on some level. One of the first alerts you get is usually, you've been here for a while. People know where to find you and they will try to take your stuff by force. So you end up preparing for raids and other events, having a big food stockpile for crop blights or volcanic winters or toxic fallouts, and putting up defenses for raids or mechanoid hive raids, stuff like that. When those raids inevitably come, you need to use your own people, be they armored or not, to fight off those raiders. This might go well, or it might not. Even a single gunshot can spell doom for your entire settlement. A pawn gets hit in the arm, say, and then she needs medical care, which means pulling another pawn from somewhere else to provide the care before she bleeds to death. Then, as long as the injury isn't fully healed, infection can flare up, which needs attention about every day or so, because otherwise, if immunity isn't built quickly enough, she dies. The best way to keep immunity going is by putting her in a hospital, which you hopefully have had the time and resources to build, research specific items for, and kept clean all the while too. Even then, through various circumstances like your doctor having mental breaks, she might not make it. If the infection is in a limb, you can cut it off if you're quick enough and she'll be okay, with an arm or a leg missing, but those can be replaced over time by prosthetics. But if she dies from this infection, this has ripples across her entire settlement. Maybe she was the only skilled one in plants, and now your crops suffer because you don't have anyone good enough to plant more heal root, which you need to make herbal medicine to prevent this shit from happening again. Or maybe she was everyone's friend and everyone starts having mental breaks, now she's gone and there's a second raid 5 minutes after her death and now you are royally fucked. RimWorld is all about cause and effect, though you don't know what effects have what causes, and the causes are determined by your storyteller, with Randy Random being of course the best choice. The way this all flows in game is done quite well, since at the start of a new colony, all of your pawns basically accept that they're gonna have to sleep on the floor for a while, so they get a mood buff to counterbalance that. Gradually this mood buff fades away as expectations rise, as your wealth and infrastructure improves over time. Aside from raids consisting of people who want to steal your stuff or eat your pawns, there's also mechanoid hives who just want to kill all humans, or insect infestations who have come to claim all land under the mountain, like some kind of mutated hive dwarfs. RimWorld purely as a game isn't actually that complex. There's really only 2 things you need to manage, which are the health and mood of your pawns. The thing is, of course, that mood especially is a real bitch to manage. The uniqueness of your pawns, and now there are ideologians as well, presents a unique challenge for each and every one of them to keep them happy. And while you just need to keep them happy, this has a lot of caveats of course. Transhumanists want augmented body parts, the more the better, so you need to either buy those, needing to make the money to do so, or make them yourself. Both are entire multi-step processes needing a lot of manpower and time, which you only have if your pawns are happy and healthy all the while. well, for the most part at least. Events are, of course, the genius addition that makes the entire game dynamic, especially playing with Randy Random as the storyteller, as I've mentioned before. You never know what's coming. You might be doing the worst you've ever done and he'll send 2 raids in a single day. You might be vibing for weeks and he'll send free stuff your way, or grand quests that are ridiculously profitable. So, finally, ideologians, a portmanteau of ideology and religion, as I'm sure you figured out for yourself. These are the center point of the new DLC and act as a code of conduct / rule of law type deal for each faction. Every separate faction has its own ideologian, which usually makes sense, like raiders requiring raiding and revering strength, or tribal colonies being more nature-oriented nudist type people. You can of course make your own ideologian. The first time booting up the game, I assumed the options would be relatively limited, but then I opened up the menu and ideologians essentially consist of 2 parts, memes and precepts. Memes are the core tenets. That's memes in the classic cultural gene term, not in the retard TikTok challenge term, by the way. And these memes color the perception of the world of its believers. Precepts are a result of those memes being linked to them. As an example, transhumanist is a meme which requires certain precepts on a certain level, like body modification has to be at least preferred and can't be disabled. How deep this goes depends, but there are more impactful memes than others. Precepts determine the gameplay style of your colony itself. Pawns will get mood penalties or buffs depending on how much of their precepts are fulfilled. This is now a huge part of the game, and going against the grain of your colony's chosen ideologian is a recipe for disaster. Now, there's a ton of memes and precepts, and I'm not going to go over all of them here, but here are some of the AI faction examples I've encountered so far. Relatively benevolent empires who just believe they're the only ones in the right, autistic mountain-dwelling fungus eaters who get pissed when they're outside too long, machine god worshipping transhumanists believing flesh is a prison, stoner hippie tree worshippers who use dryads to do all the dirty work, and of course, cannibalistic murder worshipper cults who go insane if they don't consume human meat on a regular basis. The possibilities are quite expansive, to be sure. It also takes a while to actually convert new people, dependent on some traits as well. This means that recruiting or accepting a pawn with a different ideologian is something to keep an eye on, since they might be totally opposed to your own traditions. Converting is relatively straightforward in itself. You can appoint a moral guide once you have 3 followers of the same ideologian, and the moral guide can actively convert others among other powers they have. Pawns will also passively try to convert others, but this goes both ways as well. Or you can just convert them while they're imprisoned, which is way easier. While ideologians don't necessarily bring entire new gameplay systems with it like Royalty did, or at least not on the same level, it definitely is a huge added value, essentially making your roleplay canon, as it were. RimWorld is known for its weird roleplay-ish colonies, with people having psychotic organ harvesting operations and having every chair made out of human leather and the like. But now you can just add that as an actual part of the expectations of your pawns themselves through the ideologian system, and it makes RimWorld feel all the more complete for it. And the best thing, the devs are actively listening to and integrating feedback. These tweaks are of course a very good thing, and I hope they continue with balancing certain parts of the new DLC, since in my experience there's still some stuff that's a bit broken. I made a tunneler, human supremacist transhumanist ideologian, which played into my hand of wanting a mountain base because mountain bases are cool. Stuff like pawns not minding small spaces because of tunneler, and loving fungus and insect meat, which actually requires them to eat fungus, otherwise they get a mood debuff, so you need to grow mushrooms inside the mountain. Some of these precepts are more of a downside pure gameplay wise, like requiring scarification for example. I thought it would be cool to have my pawns want ritual scars as like a symbolic way of cutting away the flesh to replace it with steel, you know, real Mechanicus vibes. So that's cool, right? But then in game, a pawn that's scarified has like a +1 mood buff because of it, which isn't much, which isn't a big deal or anything, except for the fact that all scarification I did are aching scarifications, which produces pain, which in turn gives the pawn a mood debuff of at least -5. If it's worth it purely for roleplay purposes, these precepts are immensely cool, like having a need for cannibalism or whatever, but they can make the game substantially harder, which can obviously be fun of course, but it's just a good idea to keep it in mind. I shall leave you with a few highlights of my current colony. Some guy was mad his bedroom sucked, so he started actively demolishing using his own bedroom. I had a chick going insane, wanting to kill a very valuable prisoner I was intent on recruiting, so I arrested her to prevent this from happening. A few days later, she stages a prison break and I kill her by accident together with the other prisoner as well. Some dude went into a mental daze and started wandering around the map, right into an insect hive in some caves. This was at night, so I thought he might be okay since the insects were still sleeping, but the actual mad lad stayed around there so he could eat the insect jelly. Safe to say, he didn't make it. I did try to save him, but it ended up in just having 2 rotting corpses I couldn't bury in the end. Later, that same insect hive did get deleted by a tribal trade caravan passing through it, which was pretty poggers. And lastly, we can see one of my more valuable pawns almost being yeeted to the afterlife by narrowly avoiding a crashing meteor. RimWorld can be a bitch of a game, but we have a need for dark to appreciate the light. Also, there's a ton of mods you can use to add more endgame stuff or fix regular stuff or add more pre-game stuff, whatever. There's a ton of mods. There's an entire endgame phase mod of surviving on the ship you're meant to build to escape. It's some real crazy shit. It's insane how much mods there are. Anyways, that was it for me. I hope you enjoyed the video and I'll hopefully see you in the next one.